Some stories they tell you around the fire at night. They tell you about spirits that walk the forest and creatures that live in the shadows. They tell you about the Ijele, but the way they tell it, it's just a story. A thing for kids to be scared of when the moon is new and the darkness is thick. I know the truth. I saw the truth. The Ijele isn't a spirit. It's not a legend from a long time ago. It's a hunger, a shadow with claws, and it was real. This is the story of how a folktale became the most terrifying thing I have ever known. This is a real story about the most dangerous creature in the heart of Africa, and this is the story of how we had to fight to survive. Story begins. My village is small. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone. We don't have much, but we have enough. We have the sun, the soil, and the river. We have our traditions, we have our elders, and we have the stories they tell. The stories about the Ijele were always different. Sometimes it was a man with the head of a leopard. Sometimes it was a ghost that could steal your voice. But the one thing that was always the same was the fear in their eyes when they spoke the name. The Ijele was a hunter. It haunted people. It was a spirit of punishment, they said. It only came for those who had done something wrong. We were taught to respect the forest, to never go too deep, to never walk alone after the sun had gone down. We learned the warnings not because they were rules, but because they were truths. We believed in the power of the land and the animals. But the Ijele felt different. It felt like something you could only find in a book. Until the goats started to disappear. First, it was a few. The village chief, Papa Emeka, lost two of his. Then, a few days later, my cousin's family lost one. It was strange. Our hyena would leave a mess. Our wild dog would leave tracks. But these goats just vanished. There were no signs of a struggle, just nothing. The men went out to look. They walked the edge of the forest, scanning the trees and the ground. They found nothing. No tracks, no blood, no tufts of fur, nothing. Everyone in the village started to whisper. The old women would look at each other with wide eyes. The young men would stand in small groups, their hands on the knives at their belts. You could feel the fear in the air. It was a new kind of fear, not the fear of a storm or a bad harvest. This was a silent fear, the fear of something you couldn't see. My younger brother Kojo was worried. He was 12 and the stories were still fresh in his mind. Brother, he said to me one morning as we were gathering firewood, do you think it's the Ijele? I shook my head, but even as I did, a shiver went down my spine. Don't be silly, Kojo. It's just a wild animal. Probably a leopard. Leopards are smart, they can be quiet, but even I knew it was different. A leopard is smart, but it's not a ghost. It leaves a trace. This thing left nothing. A week went by, and the disappearances stopped. The village started to relax. The elders said the animal had moved on. They held a small ceremony, making offerings to the spirits of the forest. I started to believe them, we all did. Then came the night the scream started. It was late. The moon was a sliver in the sky. I was lying in my hut listening to the crickets and the sounds of the night. A low sound like the growl of a hungry animal caught through the quiet. Then a woman's voice screaming, short, sharp, and full of pain. I jumped up. My heart was a drum in my chest. I could hear my father shouting outside. Other men were yelling. The screams stopped as suddenly as they had started. The night was quiet again. A heavy, suffocating quiet. I ran outside, following my father. The whole village was awake now. People stood in the middle of the path, holding lanterns. Their faces were pale and lit by the dim light. The screams had come from Mama Nkechi's hut. She lived alone on the edge of the village, close to the forest. We ran towards her hut. The door was off its hinges, lying on the ground. The inside was a mess. Things were thrown everywhere, but there was no one there. Mama Nkechi was gone, just like the goats. No blood, no struggle. Just a single footprint in the dirt by the door. It was large, larger than any animal I had ever seen. The toes were long and pointed. It looked human, but wrong. Papa Emeka, the chief, held up his lantern and looked at the footprint. His face was a mask of fear. It is the Ijele, he whispered. The words hung in the air, cold and heavy. No one dared to say anything. The legend was real. The next day, everyone was on edge. The women wouldn't leave their huts. The men stood guard with their spears and machetes, but no one knew what they were guarding against. How do you fight a spirit? How do you fight something that can make you disappear without a sound? That night, my friend Obi was on watch. He was a brave boy, a few years old. We had hunted together many times. He told me he wasn't scared, but I saw his eyes. I lay in my hut, trying to sleep. The sounds of the night were different now. Every rustle of a leaf, every snap of a twig sounded like a footstep. I couldn't stop thinking about Mama Nkechi. Where was she? Then I heard it. A small sound from outside my hut. A soft scratching. I froze. The sound was coming from the side of my hut. A low growl. It was not like any animal I had ever heard. It was too deep, too guttural. It sounded like something that had been waiting for a very long time. The scratching stopped. Then, the silence. I held my breath, my heart beating so hard I thought it would burst. The silence was worse than the sound. I heard a low sniffing. It was right outside my hut. I could feel the presence of it on the other side of the thin mud wall. Then I heard a new sound. It was the sound of a stone being scraped against the side of the wall, like a claw. It was scratching slowly, methodically. It was a sound that was meant to be heard. It was a threat, a warning. I lay there for what felt like an hour, staring at the small window in my hut, waiting for something to happen. The scratching stopped. I heard the sound of footsteps, light but heavy, moving away from my hut and towards the center of the village. I got up, grabbing a machete that my father kept by the door. I went outside. The moon was a little brighter now. I saw a figure, maybe 100 feet away, moving through the shadows. It was walking on two legs. It was hunched over, its arms long and close to the ground. It was fast, too fast. It moved like a predator, but it was shaped like a man. I didn't scream, I couldn't. The fear had choked the air out of my lungs. I just watched it. I saw it move towards Obi's hut. It stopped and stood for a long moment, looking at the door. Obi was on watch. He was probably inside, getting some rest. I saw the thing raise its hand, or what looked like a hand. It reached for the door. Then, a voice from the shadows. "Leave!" It was a man's voice, a deep, steady voice. I saw the shadow of another figure moving. It was Papa Emeka. He had a spear in his hand. The Ijele turned its head. I saw two eyes glowing in the dark, red like embers. It made a sound, a low, hissing sound. It was the sound of a beast, but the hiss of a snake. The chief just stood there. He didn't move. He held his spear out. I said, "Leave. Go back to the forest. You do not belong here." The Ijele stood there for another moment. Then it turned and it was gone. It didn't run. It just vanished into the darkness. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. I ran to Obi's hut. He was standing outside, looking at the place where the thing had been. His face was white. "Did you see it?" he asked, his voice shaking. I just nodded. I couldn't speak. The next morning the village was changed. No one spoke. The fear was a living thing. We were all survivors. We had all seen it or heard it. It was no longer a story. It was a monster in our world. The elders met. They talked for hours. They said we could not live like this. We had to fight back. We had to do something. Papa Emeka said he knew a way. He said the Ijele was a spirit, yes, but it was also a creature of the forest. It had a weakness. It was a hunter, and hunters can be hunted. He said we would go after it. We would not wait for it to come to us. That afternoon, a group of us gathered. My father was there, Obi was there, and old man Musa, the village hunter, who was older than anyone but the elders. He had a look in his eyes I had never seen before, a grim determination. He said he had been waiting for this for a long time. "It is not a spirit," he said, his voice raspy. "It is a leopard, a very old, very smart, and very hungry leopard. One that has eaten so many men it has forgotten what it is to be an animal. But it is a leopard. and the leopard has a home, we will find it. We spent the rest of the day preparing. We sharpened our spears and our machetes. We took our bows and made sure our arrows were straight. We packed food and water. We were going into the forest, not to hunt for food, but to hunt for a monster. At dawn, we started our trek. The air was cool and the light was grey. The forest was different now. The trees seemed to lean in, watching us. Every snap of a twig sounded like a warning. We followed Old Man Musa. He was like a ghost in the woods. He would stop and look at the ground. He would touch a leaf, a piece of bark. He would know. We followed him for hours, deeper and deeper into the forest. The light became thinner. The air was heavier. Then he stopped. He pointed to a tree. On the bark, there were deep claw marks. They were fresh. "It is close," he whispered. We kept going more quietly now. Our hearts were in our throats. The sounds of the forest were louder now. We heard birds calling and insects buzzing. But there was another sound, a sound that made my skin crawl. It was a low growl, like the one I had heard outside my hut. But this time it was louder. The growl was a lure. It was trying to get us to break, to run, to make a mistake. We saw it then. It was on a rock, a massive leopard. It was not like the leopards in the stories. It was black. The spots were there, but they were barely visible. It was a shadow. Its eyes were bright red, and it was big, too big. It was the largest leopard I had ever seen. It turned its head slowly and looked at us. It was a look that said it knew we were there. It had known we were there all along. It had been waiting. "Stay together," Papa Emeka whispered. "Do not move." The Ijele stood up. It was graceful but powerful. It let out a roar, a deep guttural sound that shook the leaves on the trees. My legs wanted to run. My mind wanted to hide, but I stood still. The leopard started to walk towards us, slowly, deliberately. It wasn't in a hurry. It was enjoying the hunt. It was enjoying the fear it was creating. Papa Emeka, with a deep breath, raised his spear. He let out a loud shout, trying to scare it. The leopard didn't even flinch. It just kept walking. Then, Old Man Musa did something I will never forget. He ran forward, throwing a small fire-hot stone at the leopard. The stone hit it in the face. It let out a roar, but it was a roar of pain. The leopard stopped. It looked at Old Man Musa with an angry glare. That was the moment we needed. As the leopard turned to face Old Man Musa, my father raised his bow and let the arrow fly. It hit the leopard right in the shoulder. A roar of pain. The leopard turned. It let out a roar, a rage-filled roar. It lunged. My father was ready. He moved to the side and the leopard missed him by inches. Then Obi and I and the other men, we moved in. We threw our spears, our arrows. We were a storm of steel. The leopard was hit. It roared. It was the sound of a beast that was dying. It tried to run, but it couldn't. It fell. It tried to stand, but it was too weak. It lay on the ground, its body heaving. Its eyes were still red, still full of anger. Old Man Musa walked up to it. He put his spear to its head. The leopard stopped struggling. It looked at him. There was a look of understanding in its eyes, a look that said, "You won." And then it died. The sun was high in the sky. The forest was silent. We stood there, looking at the body of the beast that had haunted our village. It was a leopard, an old massive dark leopard, but it was also the Ijele. The legend was dead. We carried the body back to the village. The women and children ran out to see. They saw the great beast. They saw its size, its claws, its teeth. They didn't see a leopard. They saw the end of their fear, the end of a nightmare. That night we had a fire. We ate and we talked. The elders told the story again. This time it was different. It was a story about courage. A story about how a small village, with nothing but their bravery, had faced a monster and won. The Ijele is still a story they tell in my village. But now it's not a story about a spirit that haunts the wicked. It's a story about a beast that lived and was haunted. And it's a story that reminds us that some shadows are just that, shadows. And with enough light and enough courage, they can be killed. And that, my friends, is the truth about the Ijele. It wasn't a spirit, it was a monster, yes, but it was a real monster, and we killed it.